From the historical archives of the Grand Galactic Library, entry hash 7249B. Subject: the Terror Incident. Classification: required reading for all spacefaring species. Recorded by Chief Historian Zixatal of the Centauri Academic Council. Let me be perfectly clear. I'm recording this historical document while slightly intoxicated on Rigellian brandy, and honestly, that's the only way anyone should approach this particular topic. The events I'm about to describe are so monumentally stupid that they require chemical assistance to properly process. I take another sip of my drink. Right, so. The year was 2274 by Earth's calendar, and the galaxy was, as usual, full of itself. We had about 50 major spacefaring civilizations, all playing their little political games, forming alliances, breaking alliances, and generally behaving like children with access to planet-destroying weapons. You know, the usual. But the absolute winners of the most likely to catastrophically misread a situation award were the Vexithar Alliance. Picture, if you will, a species that evolved from something similar to Earth's peacocks, but with even bigger egos. Now give them access to faster-than-light travel and a military-industrial complex that would make any war profiteer weep with joy. I paused to take another long sip. The Vexithar had spent the last 1,000 years convincing themselves they were the pinnacle of evolution. Their society was built on the principle of elegant efficiency, which mostly meant they spent more time polishing their ships to a mirror finish than actually maintaining the engines. They had the galaxy's most sophisticated etiquette manual, a document longer than most species' entire recorded histories. And they considered themselves the arbiters of all galactic culture. They were, in scientific terms, complete and utter snobs. Now, Earth had just made its presence known to the galactic community. Humans had figured out FTL travel in their typically chaotic fashion. Apparently, someone spilled coffee on a quantum computer, and somehow this led to breaking the light-speed barrier. I'd say this was impossible, but that's basically how humans do everything. The Vexithar, upon first contact with Earth, were, let's say, unimpressed. Here was a species that still watched videos of their own young falling over for entertainment, had built a global communication network primarily used for sharing pictures of small animals, and thought that putting tiny umbrellas in drinks somehow made them better. I pour another glass. The Vexithar High Command, in their infinite wisdom, looked at humanity's apparent lack of unified government, their chaotic approach to basically everything, and their habit of solving problems by either hitting them very hard or making jokes about them on their internet, and made what historians now refer to as the biggest oops in galactic history. They decided to invade Earth. I down my entire glass. Oh, how I wish I could go back in time and watch their faces when they realized just what they'd gotten themselves into. But that comes later in this tale of hubris, humor, and how humanity accidentally drove an entire alien civilization into therapy. I need to refill my glass before continuing this part of the record. The sheer magnitude of the Vexithar's miscalculation requires additional fortification. The Vexithar's first major mistake was assuming that a species' technological advancement could be measured by how orderly their civilization appeared from orbit. I remember reading their initial assessment report. They actually counted the number of asymmetrical buildings on Earth's surface, and used that as evidence of humanity's primitive architectural understanding. Their second report focused on Earth's communication patterns. I quote directly, "The humans appear to spend approximately 73.2% of their global data transmission capacity on exchanging images of small furry creatures and arguing about the correct way to prepare sustenance. They clearly have not evolved beyond basic social hierarchies." I take a long drink and laugh quietly to myself. The Vexithar War Council spent exactly 6 standard cycles planning their invasion of Earth. To put this in perspective, they usually spent longer than that, choosing the correct shade of purple for their ceremonial uniforms. Their entire strategy was based on 3 catastrophically wrong assumptions. First, they believed that humans would respond to a show of force by immediately surrendering to a superior civilization. The Vexithar had developed an elaborate ceremony for accepting Earth's surrender, including a 6-hour musical performance and a formal tea service. They actually brought the tea sets with them in their invasion fleet. Second, they assumed that disrupting Earth's central government would throw the planet into chaos. They spent 2 cycles looking for this central government before concluding that humans were simply hiding it very well. The concept of multiple independent nations working together sometimes and arguing other times was completely beyond their comprehension. I paused to wipe tears of laughter from my eyes. Their third and most hilarious assumption was that humans would fight according to the standard Galactic Combat Protocol, a document that, need I remind you, the humans had never signed, seen, or even knew existed. The Vexithar expected formatted declarations of intent before each battle, properly choreographed space combat formations, and scheduled breaks for ship maintenance and crew rest periods. The invasion plan itself was a masterpiece of overconfidence. The Vexithar assembled their most aesthetically pleasing fleet, ships arranged by size and colour naturally, and prepared their most impressive synchronous light display. Their flagship, the Elegant Solution, was polished to such a shine that it actually caused a solar flare when it passed Mercury. Their initial transmission to Earth was a 7-hour epic poem detailing the Vexithar's gracious intention to elevate humanity from its crude existence. They broadcast it simultaneously in every human language, which would have been impressive if they hadn't somehow translated everything into literal, word-for-word versions that made absolutely no sense. I have to stop for another drink as I recall their translation of surrender or face the consequences into English, which somehow came out as give up your physical form or confront the mathematical results. The Vexithar were so convinced of their superiority that they actually sent their invasion timeline to every major Earth news outlet, complete with scheduled dates for major city surrenders and a dress code for surrender ceremonies. They included a helpful note suggesting that humans might want to practice their surrender poses to ensure they would look appropriately graceful in the historical records. Perhaps the most incredible part of their pre-invasion preparation was the construction of re-education centers, massive floating platforms designed to teach humans the proper way to organize their sock drawers and the correct pronunciation of 17 different words for sophisticated in the Vexithar language. I shake my head and pour myself another drink. The Vexithar's final action before launching their invasion was to submit their victory announcement to the Galactic Historical Archives, dated 2 weeks in advance. They even included holopics of their victory parade and a menu for the celebration feast. Looking back now, I almost feel sorry for them. Almost. But then I remember the expression on the Vexithar High Commander's face when humans responded to their initial invasion force, and, well, perhaps we should move on to that part of the story. But first, I need another bottle. The next part requires significant chemical cushioning to relate properly. I've opened a fresh bottle of Rigelian brandy, the good stuff this time. What happened next in this historical disaster requires premium-grade intoxication to properly convey. The humans' first response to the Vexithar invasion fleet should have been our warning that everything was about to go spectacularly wrong. Instead of responding to the 7-hour surrender poem with either acceptance or formal refusal, humans worldwide began editing the transmission. Within 6 hours, there were over 10,000 remixed versions set to something called dubstep, and the Vexithar High Commander's most dramatic monologue had become what humans call a meme. I take a steady drink as I remember the chaos that followed. The Vexithar's first official act of war was to position their ships in a perfect geometric formation above Earth's major cities. They intended this as a display of superior coordination and military precision. The humans responded by pointing powerful spotlights at the Elegant Solution, turning their flagship into what they called a disco ball, and throwing synchronized dance parties in every threatened city. When the Vexithar began their carefully planned communications blackout, they discovered that humans had already created something called a mesh network using their personal devices. But worse than that, much worse, they found that humans had uploaded their entire meme culture to every electronic device on the planet. The Vexithar's attempt to hack Earth's networks resulted in their own shipboard systems being flooded with something called cat videos and an ancient human ritual known as the Rick Roll. I paused to pour another drink, my hands shaking slightly from suppressed laughter. The humans' military response defied every known principle of warfare. The Vexithar had expected organized resistance, perhaps some noble last stands. Instead, they got what the humans called pranking on an interplanetary scale. A group of human hackers managed to reprogram the Vexithar ship's external speakers to play something called "Never Gonna Give You Up" on continuous loop. Another group figured out how to make all their holographic displays show nothing but keyboard cat. But the true masterpiece of chaos was yet to come. When the Vexithar finally launched their ground invasion, they encountered what they thought was a brilliant human defensive strategy. Each city appeared to be defended by a single enormous inflatable creature. The Vexithar spent 3 days analyzing these guardians before realizing they were something called wacky-waving inflatable arm-flailing tube men, usually used to advertise human automobile sales. I have to stop for a moment to compose myself. The actual human military forces had adopted what they called guerrilla warfare, but with a uniquely human twist. They covered their tanks in what they called UUU paint schemes. They deployed speakers playing Baby Shark at frequencies that drove Vexithar sensors haywire. One human submarine crew managed to hack a Vexithar battlecruiser's navigation system and made it draw what humans call inappropriate images in the Pacific Ocean. The Vexithar's attempts to establish ground control were met with what humans called Home Alone tactics. Entire cities had been rigged with elaborate systems of pranks and traps. One Vexithar commander stepped out of his ship onto what appeared to be solid ground, only to fall into a pit filled with something humans call Lego bricks. He had to be evacuated for emergency psychological treatment. I drink deeply, trying to steady my voice. But perhaps the most devastating aspect of the human response was their psychological warfare. They somehow obtained the personal communication frequencies of every Vexithar ship commander and began sending them endless streams of dad jokes and pictures of their battleships edited to look like what humans call uwu cats. A particular human tactic that broke the Vexithar's collective minds was something they called aggressive hospitality. When Vexithar troops would occupy a town, the residents would treat it like a tour group that had arrived unannounced. They'd offer directions, suggest local restaurants, and try to sell them timeshares. One human grandmother actually convinced an entire Vexithar platoon to sit down for something called tea time and look at pictures of her grandchildren. The humans had somehow weaponized confusion itself. They met every Vexithar attack with such bizarre, unpredictable responses that the invaders' tactical AI simply crashed, unable to compute the sheer randomness of human defense strategies. I refill my glass once more. But the true breaking point was still to come. The Vexithar had yet to experience what humans called reality television, and their greatest weapon of all, social media influencers. I shudder visibly at the memory. I need something stronger than Rigelian brandy for this part. Let me just reach for this bottle of Andromeda whiskey. The breaking point of the war came in 3 waves, each more devastating to Vexithar sanity than the last. Here's where humanity proved they weren't just chaotic. They were weaponized chaos incarnate. Wave 1 began when humans discovered that Vexithar ship's AI could be confused by paradoxes. A group of human teenagers, because of course it was teenagers, figured out how to spam the Vexithar fleet's communication systems with philosophical questions like, if a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, but it's live-streamed on TikTok, does it make a sound? I take a long, steadying drink, but that was just the warm-up. The real devastation came from what historians now call the Great Rick Roll. Some human genius discovered that Vexithar neural interfaces were particularly susceptible to repetitive audio-visual patterns. They proceeded to hack every screen, every hologram, every communication device in the Vexithar fleet to play that infamous video on loop. The Vexithar's attempts to shut down their systems only triggered backup sequences of something called Nyan Cat. Their entire command structure collapsed within hours. Reports came in of Vexithar officers curled up in corners, rocking back and forth, humming "Never Gonna Give You Up," while drawing pictures of Pop-Tart cats. I pour myself another generous measure. The second wave was even worse. Humans began broadcasting their reality TV shows directly to Vexithar ships. The invaders, who had spent millennia perfecting their society's etiquette and order, were suddenly exposed to something called Real Housewives. Their cultural analysts went into collective shock, trying to understand why humans would voluntarily document such chaos. One Vexithar anthropologist watched 72 straight hours of Keeping Up with the Kardashians in an attempt to understand human social hierarchies. He now runs a self-help group for traumatized academics and starts every session by saying, "But why were they famous? Why?" I paused to steady my shaking hands. But the final straw, the thing that absolutely shattered the Vexithar's will to continue the invasion, was when humans unleashed their social media influencers. Thousands of human content creators began making what they called invasion reaction videos. They started reviewing Vexithar ships on their aesthetic, rating their invasion techniques, and worst of all, pointing out how their formations weren't totally Instagram-worthy. A human teenager with millions of followers made a viral video calling the Vexithar's flagship Chuggy, a word that still has no clear definition in any galactic dictionary. The entire Vexithar High Command had to be placed on suicide watch. The finishing blow came when humans started a TikTok trend called Invader Transformation Challenge. Millions of humans posted videos of themselves improving images of Vexithar ships and soldiers with sparkly filters, cat ears, and something called UU faces. The Vexithar's sophisticated cultural AI tried to analyze these trends and literally melted down, leaving behind a single message: "I can't even." I drain my glass and immediately refill it. The Vexithar fleet commander's final transmission before their retreat became an instant classic in the Galactic archives. It consisted of 3 minutes of incoherent screaming, followed by the words, "They're not defending their planet. They're entertaining themselves with our invasion. We're not conquerors to them. We're content." The last Vexithar ship fled Earth's solar system while being pursued by something humans called a podcast sponsorship offer. I finish the bottle, knowing I'll need another for the aftermath section. For the record, this is the first and only time in galactic history that an invasion force has retreated due to weaponized cringe. Their words, not mine. I've switched to something called human tequila for this part. A fitting choice, as it apparently makes as little sense as humans themselves. The aftermath of the Vexithar's failed invasion changed galactic society forever. The once proud Vexithar Empire basically went into collective therapy. Their entire species took a gap year to find themselves. The last I heard, they've converted most of their warships into traveling meditation retreats, and they flinch every time they hear synthesized music. I take a sip of this mysterious human drink and immediately regret my life choices. The most profound change wasn't just the Vexithar's retreat. It was how human culture exploded across the galaxy. Despite every quarantine attempt, despite every cultural protection measure, human memes spread through galactic communication channels like some kind of digital virus. Species that had never even met humans were suddenly ending formal diplomatic transmissions with LOL and ROFL. The Galactic Council found itself dealing with an epidemic of what humans call shitposting in official communications. The distinguished delegate from the Arcturus system ended a 5-hour speech on economic policy with something called a D's nuts joke. The entire chamber was torn between horror and uncontrollable laughter. I paused to examine the tequila bottle, wondering if it's actually some sort of human psychological weapon. The Vexithar themselves underwent a dramatic transformation. Their once immaculate cities now have designated chaos zones, where citizens are encouraged to express themselves randomly. Their young have started wearing what they call Hawaiian shirts, over their ceremonial robes. Their official language now includes the word yeet. But perhaps the most significant change was how other species began viewing Earth. The planet was officially classified as mostly harmless in the Galactic database, but now has a warning label that reads, "Approach with caution, weaponized chaos capabilities." I take another careful sip. My translator has started adding ooh to the end of every sentence, and I'm not sure how to fix it. Several species have tried to study humans since the incident, attempting to understand their power. The Centaurian Science Academy spent a full cycle analyzing human warfare tactics. Their conclusion was simply, they're not playing 4D chess. They're playing Calvin ball with reality itself. The Galactic Military Academy now includes a mandatory course called Human Unpredictability and Its Applications, though no one has actually managed to predict anything humans do. The course mostly consists of watching human Vine compilations and trying not to have an existential crisis. I pour another shot, wondering if this is how humans got their ideas in the first place. Tourism to Earth has actually increased, though every visitor must sign a waiver acknowledging that they might become part of a meme or end up in something called a reaction video. The gift shops at human spaceports do a brisk business selling shirts that say, "I visited Earth and all I got was this psychological trauma and a TikTok account." The Galactic Council has officially classified human unpredictability as a strategic resource and potential weapon of mass confusion. There's now a standard protocol for any species considering hostile action against Earth. It consists of 3 steps. 1. Don't. 2. Seriously, don't. 3. Have you seen what they did to the Vexithar? I contemplate the empty tequila bottle, understanding now why humans invented this particular drink. As for the Vexithar survivors, well, they've established support groups. The most popular one is called "I Tried to Invade Earth and All I Got Was This Lousy Mental Breakdown." They meet weekly to share their experiences and try to understand why humans put little paper umbrellas in their drinks. As I record this final section, I've switched back to Rogelian brandy. My tentacles are still shaking from the human tequila experience. The current galactic status can be summed up in the new warning beacons that now orbit every approach vector to Earth's solar system. They broadcast a simple message in all known languages. Caution, humans. Proceed at own risk. Side effects may include confusion, spontaneous dancing, and uncontrollable meme absorption. I need another drink just looking at the latest galactic survey results. Humanity has been officially classified as a Class O no civilization, the only one in the galaxy with this designation. The OH stands for Organized Havoc, and the No stands for exactly what you think it does. The Galactic Standards Bureau had to create entirely new categories just to classify human behavior. They've been labeled as simultaneously pre-rational and post-rational, with a note stating they somehow skipped rational entirely and it's working for them. I swirl my drink thoughtfully. Every major spacefaring civilization now includes a mandatory course called Human Studies in their diplomatic training. The final exam consists of watching Earth entertainment broadcasts for 6 hours and trying to maintain logical coherence. The current pass rate is 3%. The Galactic Museum of History has an entire wing dedicated to the Vexithar invasion, or as humans call it, that time we trolled an alien empire into having an existential crisis. The gift shop sells plushies of crying Vexithar warriors and T-shirts with "Never Gonna Give You Up" printed in Galactic Standard. I finish my final glass of brandy. So let this historical record serve as both a warning and a reminder to any species considering hostile action against Earth. That planet runs on chaos energy and expired coffee. Their primary defense strategy is weaponized absurdity, and they will absolutely turn your invasion into their entertainment. As the humans would say, thank you for coming to my TED Talk. End historical record. Note: this document is to be updated regularly as humans continue to do whatever it is humans do. Current galactic betting pools favor them either ascending to a higher plane of existence or inventing pizza rolls that don't burn the roof of your mouth. Somehow both seem equally likely.